Okay then. Good morning. Probably no one listening anyway, but that's okay. Levels look good, and off we go. So today I'm going to drive a scenario that I've built yesterday. It's the first scenario I've ever built, so we'll see how this goes. I did give it a brief test run, so this will be the second time I've driven it, and this will be the second time I've driven this route in this direction, and about the fourth or fifth time I've driven this route, but only the second time the whole length. So, we'll see what happens. We're in Train Simulator 2021, and I thought I'd show you the scenario builder to start with, so that's where we are at the moment. We're sitting out here at Pittsburg. I'm not sure if this is where BART ends up in its day, but this is in about 1937 or so. And I wanted to show you what I've set up from a train's perspective. So I'm not going to go through setting it up. I probably will do a stream at some point on creating these things, because I have to say it was a bit of a pain in the ass to actually figure out how this thing works. There's not a lot of guidance anywhere. There's some excellent articles on Steam Workshop. There's some excellent articles on the forums. And that is very cool, very handy from the community support like that. So let's just go and have a look in the timetable view. This is our entire route over here. We're starting off up here at the start of the red line. We're going to follow this whole red line down. This is our train, ends up in San Francisco down here. So I've set it up with passenger stops. It turns out on my test run that's actually not the right thing to do, because if I zoom into the map, it turns out that you have to obey the colours in these places. So some places you can pick up passengers from, and some places you can't. So running the scenario in its current form, when you get to the end of it, it does actually say you failed, because you couldn't pick up passengers from a lot of these places. So it says you failed to pick up passengers. Well, how about that? You can't. So that's all right. But anyway, I've set up a bit of a timetable, and I'll just zoom back out so we can see the whole map again. Well, most of it anyway. And just for a bit of interest, what I've done is I've bunged in a few other trains. So when we get down this end, we'll see a few running around down the San Francisco end, if we make it on time. If they don't, they might clash with us. There's a couple of freights running around. No, I don't want to rename you. And there's another one up here just to keep a bit of interest at the start. I've got a shuttle running back and forth between Mallard, which goes to Sacramento on a ferry. When I say it does, that's what it represents. We've got a meet down here at Pinehurst. Interestingly enough, on my test run yesterday, because the point's being set the wrong way, by me, of course, assuming the AI would do it, I actually crashed into that meet. Oh well. And we have some more down here around Berkeley. So this train, I have no idea if this actually follows anywhere near the path that BART follows today, but a lot of the station names are the same or very similar. So my guess is it's probably close. I want to find out a bit more about the history of this area, so it's interesting how gameplay promotes you to do that. But anyway, let's just start. Now I'm just making sure it's on one time, and we are rewound back to the start. That's a bit of a interesting thing with the scenario thing, and if anybody sees this and knows differently, please let me know. If you play a test run and you let it play right through to the end, and then you let it save without pressing this button first, there doesn't seem to be any way to recover your scenario. So the hours of work you put in to build your scenario, it starts at the end, which is a bit shit. Now, I couldn't find anybody talking about how to rewind it back to the start if you forget to do it. What I did find is a lot of people warning you that you need to. So I'm joining that list of people warning you that you need to, because if you don't, you're stuffed. But anyway, hopefully that's not actually true, and hopefully someone can put me straight on that, because it'd be nice if there was a simple way to resolve that. But we are going to be using Raildriver today. So I've had this thing since the early 2000s. I can't remember exactly when I got it, but I bought it when I was living in America, and it has moved countries with me. It's now 2021, so it's just roughly 20 years later, and it still works. So anybody that whines about how expensive these things are, it was the same price then, so they haven't gone up. and it's lasted 20 years. So you got to be pretty bloody happy that a piece of computer hardware's lasted that long. There's nothing else in my computer that's lasted that long. This thing's like the farmer's axe. Every time I do something with it, I change it. It's not a potato, but nor is it a UFO. So it's just a i5 9700. It's a 9th generation. And I've got tons of SSD storage and tons of RAM. I'd love to get a new card, but it's a 1060 Ti with, I think, 14 gig of RAM on it. So I mostly use it for video processing and photo processing, but it works fine for this and it keeps up. So that's kind of cool. Oh, I should shout out for the background behind me that my wife found that because she's sick of appearing in my videos that I do. So we have a new background. Anyway, let's drive. So we're in our train now. Looks like rail driver's working, so that's a bonus. And let's see if we can pick up passengers here. I'm not sure. No, we can't, so we're just going to leave. I should put my headphones on so I can hear this, because you can. That's a bit of a dumbass thing to do. Release the brakes, forward, and away we go. Now, I might point out, even though this is in America, I'm not following Rule 14 with the horns, partly because I hate it, but also partly because I don't think it applied in 1937. Happy to be corrected on that. Did a little bit of research, and you couldn't really tell, to be honest. So we've cleared the station now. And it's early in the morning, so, being nice to people. People live here. Let's just use trolley bells. So if we have a look at our train as it leaves town. Whoops, bit too much speed. Speeding right at the start. There's a good start to the game. So this is a Sacramento Northern Interurban car. And we're running a motor and a couple of trailers today. We're heading off into the dawn light. For such an old game, the graphics are actually pretty good in this thing. I don't mind it at all. This route has a lot of very tight corners. I found by trial and error that if you stay around the 50 to 55 mile an hour mark on the corners, it seems to be pretty sweet, except for the really tight ones. And it does seem to warn you about the tightest ones, because whoever made the routes put speed limits in. If you're not familiar with 2021, this is our HUD, which you can turn off. So it's a much more immersive experience without it, but good luck to you if you don't know the route very well. So I'm going to keep it on. I should show you that the controls really do move when you move the rail driver. And we can have cab lights and things, but you wouldn't run those in reality. So in our car here, a little bit of a view. We can look out the side. We can look around behind us. And we can look out this side and look around behind us. So we see a nice pink glow in the distant sky there because the sun is rising behind us. Now we can also see from as we cruise along. Should concentrate on driving a little bit or I won't have any hope at all of keeping to the timetable. So you can see some things coming up. West Pittsburg siding is our first stop. We're going to meet another interurban shuttle there and a freight train. That's a bumpy bit of track. Now, yesterday when I did this, the meet with the freight train didn't work. I have corrected it, so hopefully we'll actually get through here because I haven't tested it. Famous last words. Because if we don't get through here, it'll be a very short stream. My dad, I'm streaming this stuff for fun. I don't really care if anyone watches. It helps me to talk it through, it helps me understand the route, and it helps me learn it. And when I found out that TS2021 had traction, and that Dovetail were promoting it in a Humble bundle, which is still available at the moment. I'm nothing to do with Dovetail, by the way. Now I'm just going to slow right down because we have to go through a set of points here. Well, there's our meet with the trolley, and the freight is sitting in the siding. Fantastic. It's probably going to work. I may have to set some points myself to get out. We'll see. You might see this little thing down here. The objective is to keep that in the green so you have passenger comfort, or freight comfort if you're pulling a freight. So I'm coming up into our first stop, and there's a little steeple cab there with steel coils. Now points are set because this signal's green, which is great. Not sure if we'll pick anyone up. Actually, oh, yep, it's working. Good. I can tell because that little red bar says people heading towards my train. His tag's showing. Look at that. How embarrassing. Okay. Well, he's not going to get on because my passenger loading has apparently finished, so we're just going to get out of here. Brakes off. And off we go. Now, I don't know if that freight has moved. It should have by now. That's what I was talking about. The timing was a little bit tight because if it decides to leave before you get to that station, you're stuffed, and that's what happened to me. Hopefully we'll see our train soon. There it is. Nice picturesque rail fan view hiding behind the grass. Standard Gunzel. I'll just stick below that speed limit because it's a pretty tight corner. Is that the biggest cow you've ever seen or what? Look at that. It's bigger than the tram. That's huge. Now, one of the rules of this route is that you have to slow down at this point, below the speed limit. Be prepared to stop in case this little subway thing down here is full of water. It's not today. There is a scenario you can play where it is full of water, and I thank the guy for making it, but man, it is in a mean scenario. It doesn't really explain what you need to do. And you fail it 20 times until you figure out what you're supposed to do. The physics in Train Sim 2021, which is really TS2019 and earlier, and it has birth generations going all the way back to the original Microsoft Train Simulator, I believe. The physics aren't awful, not brilliant, but they aren't awful either. So your standard practices apply that you want to set up for the speed that you want to be doing when you get to the place where you need to do it. I know that sounds a bit weird, but all I'm really saying is you need to plan shit out in advance. Which means you need to learn the route. Now, to read these speed signs, oddly, you have to turn your headlights off. That one's got nothing on it anyway, because the headlights outshine everything, which is a marked difference to Train Sim World 2, which I also play, and I'll probably stream Rail Driver with that too, because there's more people interested in Rail Driver with that, but I love traction, and I found this, so I'm happy. But in Train Sim World 2, the headlights do jack, whereas in this game, they're relatively realistic. It's 7:08 now, they should be awake anyway. Could be a Sunday, I suppose. That'd be mean, wouldn't it? Yeah, we can crank the speed up now. We won't make 80 mile an hour anyway, unless we get a downhill section somewhere, because this thing's just not that powerful. It accelerates quick, but its top speed's not brilliant. So to keep an eye out for corners, and in this dawn light, that's actually going to be a little bit difficult. So we left Pittsburg there, which has the same name. Now this one coming up, Port Chicago, this one apparently was actually originally named Bay Point, and today is named Bay Point. I used to live in the Bay Area. I lived in Oakland and later Berkeley, and I worked all around the entire Bay Area, but principally in San Francisco. And my office was in Concord. Now I'm not stopping at this little shelter here because there's no one there. But I really should probably slow down for the shelters just in case there's someone there, because they are a flag stop. Which means if someone jumps out, I'm meant to stop. I don't think anyone's going to jump out though. I haven't seen it happen. I don't know if the game even does it. They just warn you about it in the tutorials, which is either designed to keep you on edge, wondering if it'll happen, or it really does happen. So on our right hand side over there is another railway. I tried to put some trains on that, but the scenario editor wouldn't let me, so I don't think they're playable track. Although in one of the built-in scenarios, I have seen a train on this track. So maybe I just don't know how to do it. That's quite possible. I will keep playing with that, because I wouldn't mind making these runs a little bit more busy. If I'm going to build scenarios, I want them to be busy. Bit of a curve coming up, so I'll just slow down a little bit. The brakes are relatively snappy in this until you get to the point where you're stopping, and then suddenly they're not. But that's okay. Just coasting along. 2 miles to our first stop. Amazingly, there's some people looking at this stream. Welcome. Feel free to pop stuff in the live chat if you wish. And yes, I do often talk to myself. That's okay. I leave these things up on YouTube anyway in case people want to watch them later and get a feel for the route, because it'll help people decide whether they want to buy these things or not. Remember, if you are buying stuff from Dovetail, and again, I've got nothing to do with them, I'm just a customer. If you're buying stuff from Dovetail, wait for their sales, because normally their stuff is quite pricey. Each piece of DLC is as much, if not more, than the original game, which a lot of effort does go into this, so that's fairly reasonable, and it is a relatively large employer, so again, fairly reasonable. They're probably spending, my guess is, probably about, from what numbers I've heard on their streams, maybe $1 million a week just on salaries. So they got to rake money in somehow. But they often have sales. And when I say often, I mean often. Just about every month there's a sale going on for some reason or another. And it's not all the stuff's on sale. So stick to stuff on your wish list and you will find stuff of interest. I do nearly every time. So I'd much rather buy a new route. This one, I think I got it for $12. So that's pretty cool. And I wasn't going to buy TS2021 because I do own previous versions of this. And to be honest, it's not a lot different. They didn't really do much between 19 and 21. So I wasn't going to get it. But then they brought out a humble bundle where you can, if you want to, force the majority of the money to go to charity. So I bought TS2021. The main differences between 2021 and Train Sim World is that I'm going very slow here, I should probably speed that up, but we are going to stop soon. The main differences is in 2021 and previous incarnations, essentially the player is the train. Now, I think we're going to turn into the siding here, so wash off a bit of speed, because I don't really want to derail it this early. Well, I don't really want to derail it at all. Now, in Train Sim World, you are a player, so you can go around, you can walk around, you can look at things. There is a free roam camera in 2021 and previous incarnations, but it's not the same as being able to walk around on the tracks and go and set things like switches and stuff. So here you've got to rely on the map, or if it's near enough you can click on it. So there's train order signals here, if I remember my American signalling correctly, and they don't want anything, so we're just going to stop here. Interestingly, the stopping point's not in the platform, so I have to come all the way down here till it shows 0, 0, or it'll say that I failed to stop. And we'll try and load. And while we're trying to load, let's have a look at the outside camera. Because there's those massive cows again. Look at that. They're not so bad at this angle. When you see them from a distance, they are as big as the train. There's some perspective issues in the graphics engine here. Look, we've actually got passengers, but if we go and sit in with the passengers, no we don't. No one there. Bum. Where'd they go? But anyway, it's time to go, so enough gas bagging. And the Westinghouse brakes work the way you'd expect Westinghouse brakes to work. It's a self-lapper, which actually surprised me a little bit for rolling stock this old to have a self-lapping brake, but I guess it's possible. I thought they were more recent than that, but I could be wrong. Probably am. I'm not putting on a ton of speed here because we have to go back onto the main line up here. We have a green signal. Anybody that works in a real railway, even if you're working on your own, it's a good idea to call out the signals, because it just means that you pay attention. In this game, your workload does get a little bit busy at times, and this is a long run, so this run down to San Francisco is relatively realistic time-wise. It actually does take nearly 2 hours to do it. And when I finally publish this video, I'll probably chop out some of the boring bits. But for now, you're along for the ride. See, I do remember these hills from working in the Bay Area, so I have been able to crank it up now. I have kind of been able to place where I am as I go through the game, even though the modern landmarks that I'm used to aren't there. Oop, that cow's watching us. It's a funny noise this thing makes, given it's an electric engine. Or motor. The water's quite nice in 2021. It's actually been one of my disappointments with Train Sim World, the water, because the Unreal Engine does amazing water. But TSW does not. A little bit fast for a corner, but there you go. Maybe I should pay more attention to the actual train instead of gunzeling it all the time, but I thought you'd like to see the scenery. You have to do the scenic thing when there's no signals coming up, because if you don't keep on top of the signals in this thing, it bites you. Even though the speed zone is 80 mile an hour here, this thing hasn't got a hope of actually getting up to that, and I really doubt those little steeple cabs that you see can do it either. And my research suggests that it was actually at the driver's discretion in the 80 mile an hour zone, so it really means it's... Whoops, I was meant to stop here, it's going to fail me. Damn it. There was no warning for that. Oh, well, it's not going to fail me, we're just going to keep going then. You're actually meant to stop there because you're crossing another railway. Interestingly, there was no indication of that coming up in the HUD. Mayhaps I need to add in a stop there in my scenario plan. Maybe then it'll work. It's more of those giant cows and the cool old cars of some indeterminate shape, so no one pays any licensing or royalties. They could be anything really with that shape. It's a quaint idea that you have to stop at another railway to see if there's any trains coming before you proceed across. And it's interesting that the game doesn't see that as a SPAD. I think in the other person's scenario I played, it did. So they must have put a stop in there. So I'll have to look at that, because that would be a good thing to do, I think. It's sort of a quaint notion that as you approach another railway, if that railway was established before yours, you have to stop and give right away to that railway. Whereas normal humans would have expected some signalling. Just letting the speed wash off now, because we have got a 20-mile-an-hour limit going through Concord, where I used to work. And to me, it kind of looks like where the BART station is from a ground perspective. But I'm not going to hang my hat and say it definitely is. Because all the big buildings are missing. What is kind of interesting when we get back down towards the Oakland end of the world is that a bit of what's known as the maze is actually there, but without the freeways. And I need to do some research, because I kind of think the way they've modelled the San Francisco end of the San Francisco Bay Bridge after Yuba Buena Island is incorrect, because they've modelled it as a double deck. And I'm not too sure about that. Could be right. You know, just like car drivers everywhere, crossing's running, but they just drive through it anyway. This guy's going to stop. So we're down to our 20 limit. There's some passengers up here. I altered my scenario because I had it coming into the platform before. But for a reason that I couldn't figure out, it wouldn't let me out. Of course, we have that feature that annoys motorists to this day. Train crossings going when the train's sitting in the station. It just encourages people to run through crossings. Compressor's pumping up the brakes, and away we go. I'm sure there would have been someone yelling all aboard or something else ridiculous at that point. Nice shadow effect. See? You can do shadows without ray tracing. How about that? And in the 2021 engine, the wheels actually go around. They don't in Train Sim World 2, they're just blurry. But that's a limitation of Unreal, not a limitation on what they've done in the game. Back up to our 80, so let's book. Train looks very nice in the early dawn light. They've done the brakes in a relatively nice way, and that if you manage to equalise the needles in the top right gauge, guess what? More brake doesn't help you at all. So they've got that bit right, because once you've equalised them, there is no more air brake. And if you're not stopping at that point, well, good luck. In a simulator, not much happens. You just come off the tracks and go, well, that was a bit shit. But in real life, well, I suppose you might, if you're lucky, just think the same thing, but probably not. You're probably in a world of hurt. We can look at our map to see how we're going and see where we're headed to. There's our train up there. So we have got this area coming up, which we're not stopping at. Our next stop is down here at Pleasant Hill, which is kind of cool. And if anybody at Dovetail listens, I thought that was a road. It's not. But anyway, if anyone at Dovetail's listening, let's just flick back to that map. Why is it so hard for the maps in Train Sim World 2 to have text on them? Look, station names, junction names, names of the rails, names of the sidings. Brilliant. Why can't we do that? And it probably should have been a bit slower for this curve, but that's okay. Why can't we do that in Train Sim World 2? Because, after all, Train Sim World 2 came from Train Sim World 1, and the maps were bollocks in that too, and they're bollocks in Train Sim World 2, so let's do something about it. Don't get me wrong, I do like the Train Sim World 2 game. 2 miles to go, going through a junction here. I thought I put a train over on this siding, but it's not there. I wonder where it went. Didn't think I put a driver in it, so it shouldn't have gone anywhere. But anyway, that's life. Hopefully we don't encounter it somewhere in the form of a red signal. It was facing westbound, so if it left, it's going in the same direction we are. Looks like we're going through orchard country here. Let's have a look from above. Yep, lots and lots of orchards. Fairly nicely modelled too. Pleasant Hill in the modern day is a great big BART station. You're going to be a little bit disappointed if that's what you're expecting. There's some people here. I'm supposed to stop for that too, but I'm not gonna. And that's not actually where I'm meant to stop. Must put stop warnings in for those. It's interesting that there's people back there when I set up a passenger stop at Pleasant Hill, which is just here. But there's people waiting at that junction. Of course, we stop on the road and load and unload the people that aren't there. So if we have a look. Look, no one there. Oh, they're back at the junction, silly people. Alright, brakes off. As the brake gets nearing to release, so as the red needle's heading for 0, you power on. There's no automation at all in this train, so if you power on before that, works fine. Nothing much happens though. The dirty shape on the windscreen where the wiper goes, so if I turn that on you'll see what I mean. That's actually kind of thoughtful, really. Now you're looking at all of these orchards or nut trees or whatever they are here. Do you wonder how Walnut Creek got its name, maybe? And a little bit like Pleasant Hill, if you're expecting a massive station presence for Walnut Creek, meh. It's not what you're going to get. It's not as small as Pleasant Hill, I guess. It's got some houses and stuff. And some buildings, probably a cold store. So we're coming up on Walnut Creek, green signal. Going straight through. Just wanted to clear the crossing. There they go. They just kind of disappear. They don't really get on. It has got a station, so the town's a little bit established at this time frame. I thought I could look around here in this view, but I can't. And one thing that is recognisable from modern times is those power lines. They are still there. Not these ones by the tracks. The compressor sound in this is modelled really nicely, and the train sounds are quite nice. I think the sound on the sort of background rumble's probably a little high, but the motor sounds are pretty good. There's some industry sightings here for building up scenarios. I think it comes with just some scenarios that do stuff around here. One thing I have noticed in these scenarios is that the Interurbans never seem to have any freight cars on them, but photos and videos I've seen, I don't know about the Sacramento ones, but photos and videos I've seen do tend to suggest that Interurbans did have freight cars. Quite often. They did a mixed rather than a straight passenger. Thanks, YouTube. Could have sworn I told Windows to not give me notifications. Thanks, Microsoft. That's okay. Whoops, we're going to go slow for this curve. Almost missed that. Too busy looking at notifications. We got there though. Stayed on the track. Yay! So our next stop is Lafayette for picking up of passengers. So if we have a quick look at the map to see how we're travelling and centre on me. There we are there. And we're going to have another train meet here. So I'm going to slow that down a little bit because if I remember correctly, no, we're on the main at this one. That's okay. So this place we're coming into now, Saranac, is probably just part of Walnut Creek or Lafayette these days. I don't think it even exists anymore. Could be a suburb of one of those areas, I guess. A couple more of our steeple cabs. Lots and lots of freight cars. And that weird concept of having a caboose, or as I'd call it, a guards van on the back, with a banking engine behind it. Hey look, cows that are the right size. Wow. Just to be different. Coming up on Lafayette. But there's a flag stop before we get there. No one there. When you're on the street running later on in Oakland, I did wonder what happens if a car hits you and they just go through you. Kind of interesting. And if I remember right, I put myself off the main for this, so just need to remember to slow down so we don't come off at the points. Or switch, as my American mates would call it. Everyone else calls them points. Whereas Americans say that switches have points. And that's okay. It's one of those things that you can argue with people on YouTube all you want. more milk cans. See, if it was TSW2, I'd be expecting to get out and put the milk cans in. But you don't. Sit here a bit while our passengers load up. That's what that red bar that you can see moving is near the time. There we go. I set most of the passenger stops to 10 seconds to be not too boring, which is not prototypical, but sitting still in front of your computer for 30 seconds when nothing's going on, bit boring. The sounds of a bad joint on a broken sleeper. Excellent. Yep, 40 mile. I was not being very observant because that was right in my face that was coming up on the HUD. Now, this next place we're stopping at, so this is West Lafayette. And I'm using the pronunciation that I remember from the BART announcements every day going to work on the train. So if it's wrong, whatever. You'll discover I'm pretty hard to troll because I don't care. But this place we're going to stop at next, called Burton, is not a familiar name to me. So either this departs from where BART goes, or Burton got swallowed up by something else. I know the tunnel that this one goes through to go through the hills is not the same one that we experience on BART. There's a 23 for Charles, of course. We've got a 25 coming up on the approach to Burton, which either means we're going into a siding or it's just got a really tight corner. As you may recall from earlier in the stream, I mentioned it does seem to warn you about the really tight ones. Now, interestingly, in the modelling of this place, the railway bridges I think are pretty good, but that road bridge that you saw off to the side there looks like some pretty modern cast concrete stuff. So when did cast concrete come in? That's an interesting story. Because I know they were doing it in the early 1900s in massive structures, but I didn't think they were doing it in road bridges until about the 50s. So I think my guess of going into the siding was about right, because we're going to. Because there's no massive curve here. 25 mile an hour is 40 kilometers an hour, and for the sharpness of these points, to me that seems a little bit quick, but the train seems to handle it okay. Could have staged a meet there, I suppose. Maybe I'll edit the scenario to put a meet in every possible place you can have a meet that leaves after you get there. Although bizarrely in the scenario planner, everything seems to be based on time rather than events. But I need to research that a little bit more. I tried to find information to see if you could start things off, because what would be really nice is something else starts either right before your train gets there or right after, rather than relying on you being on time. Because it'd be really cool, because you're not going to get it right to the second. I'm not running this as a timetabled run because I'd already be late. But what would be really cool is if they do run by events, is you'll actually see the points change and the train leave. That would be cool. That would be nice. I've got a 45 coming up, so I'll just let it drift backwards. We're going uphill, we're coming to the summit. A little bit of juice because the hill and the curve is eating a fair bit. Just want to maintain. That bit of the physics is right, that you lose speed on corners. Fairly large building off to our left there. Now the Moraga name I seem to remember from when I lived there, but I think it was a little bit off the beaten track. And we're not going to stop here anyway. Because we're going to stop a little bit further down the track. It is a massive building. And just out of curiosity, if you've got that much arcing happening, there's something wrong with your pantograph. I can understand that much arcing with a trolley pole. Although I suppose pantographs may not have had the graphite strip in them in this era. They might have just been steel. No loading. Which is a pity, because there's someone there. Now, at this point in the run, I'm sure that we have departed well and truly from where BART goes. Because we want to centre on us. BART wouldn't have a corner like that. And we're looping around before we head through the tunnel. So BART goes straight. Just let the speed wash off again because we've got a 40 coming up anyway. So this railway more follows the land, whereas BART sort of brutalised their way through the universe. And they made it straight wherever they could. Whereas this one follows the more normal approach of trying to find a route that's not too steep and not too curvy. But being traction, everything's pretty short wheelbase, so you'd struggle if you wanted to bring something big through here. Plus some of its grades are quite interesting. Mostly it's like this, about 1 to 1.5, but there's a few places where it's 3%. Now it's interesting, the other curve was marked 40 and this one's 80, but there's no way you'd get around it. Now we're doing okay time-wise, because we are in the hills that separate the east and western portions of the climate. Now, if you've ever lived in the Bay Area, you'll know that as you cross the hills, whether you go over them or whether you go through them in one of the various tunnels, Caldecott being the biggest and most well known, and that's the one where modern BART rolls through next to it, you'll know that there's a total climate change between the inner side and the bay side. The bay side is temperate and generally 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, and it's always not humid, but it's not dry either. And on the other side of the hills, it's often in the low to mid 30s most of the time. And there are even times where you get into the 40s. So it's a bit like living in Melbourne. That's that tight one. Did leave the braking a little bit late on that one because I was looking at stopping at Pinehurst, and then I looked down and saw the speed limit and went, ooh. So this is one of our meets coming up, and this is based on time. We're not going to wait for him because I think from my schedule, I don't think he departs here until about 7:58. So we're not going to hang around to see him go. Now you'd think he'd stop there where the station is, but no, the stopping point's all the way down here, which I suppose would make sense if you had an 8-car train, but I don't. Load them up, and we will... yeah, we'll watch ourselves depart when it happens. It actually is loading this time. That one person's taken a long time to get in, though. Having a bit of a gas bag with the conductor. And here it goes. This is a really typical Gunzel shot here. through the weeds. It's probably poison ivy here too. Let's watch our arcing pantograph. No, we can't. Yeah. Notice how the arcs don't happen where the wire is? That's pretty funny. Guess there's only so much modelling you can do, really. So there's a little road off to the left there. It's cool that these have pantographs and trolley poles. Would have been nice to be able to put trolley poles up. Another little whistle stop. Sequoia. Doesn't feel very fast when you're going in this through here. And we have got a 25 coming up, so I'm going to let it start whooshing off some speed, even though this is a pretty steep hill at 2.2%. Let's jump back into the cab to experience this, or we'll end up trapped out there when the tunnel comes. Eastport. .25 feels too fast for that curve. It's a very tight one. It's making all that noise at 10. That's a tight curve. Well, interestingly, I can actually see Moraga on the map there, so it does exist. But I can't find a place called Sequoia, but I did find possibly where this goes through. And it goes through underneath what today is Skyline Boulevard, because we eventually come out on College. So if I put this back over here, I'm guessing we're coming through somewhere around here, because we eventually pop out. There's 35th. Eventually we pop out on College. So that's just a bit of amusement for you. And of course I'm going a bit fast because I wasn't in focus when I dropped the throttle back. A little bit of brake here. Now we are going down a very steep hill, so I just need to find the spot where the brakes can hold us. In fact, we're supposed to stop here at Havens. So I'm going to give it lots of brakes. Try and keep it in the green though. Because we're meant to stop here. And we are still in the 0-0. Whoops, no. We failed to stop. So it's not going to let me load and unload, so I'm not going to bother trying. Because if you don't get it at the right point, it just goes, nah, screw you, Jack. You went too far. See what happens when you're looking at maps? Now you notice the effect on a 3% grade. Look how fast we're picking up speed with no power. So if I didn't put some brake on, we would have been speeding before the last car actually came through those points. So put some brake on and leave it on and let it gradually creep up. And I'll try and give it just a touch more brake. That might be enough. That's too much. That's going to slow us down. Because we are allowed to do 40, so let's let it pick up again. Well, we've got another 25 coming up, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. So it's a bit of a juggle through here just to try and keep it just right. This is somewhere where train simulators deviate a bit from real trains, because if you put the brakes on and leave them on for a really long time, they get hot. And if they get hot enough, the surface of the brake blocks melt, and then they don't work at all. Now, the graphics make it look like we're going uphill here, but we're not. We're going downhill. But that does gel with reality a bit. There's places on Puffing Billy where I think I'm driving uphill and I'm not. And there's places where I think I'm driving downhill and I'm not. Give this some brakes soon. Because you do want to stay in some degree of control rather than just rolling along. That's about the minimum you can give it and actually get anything on the dial, so... That seems to be holding relatively well at that speed. I know it's a bit under the limit, but the reality is you generally don't drive at the limit because you've got nowhere to go. And if you're not paying attention for a few seconds and it creeps up on you, you're speeding. I've got a station coming up and we're on a steep grade, so we'll give it some more to start us coming down again, even though it's a fair way out. Might be enough. Because it's not this little shack here. This is called Terrace. I think this is actually going to stop a little bit too early, so let's drop some brake off. Now, the first time I tried to test this scenario, I left these points set wrong and I ran straight into the front of this, so I am just going to pull up to... No, they're fine. See, it's not even a station here. It's interesting, you can't see that big substation from the air. Alright, let's get out of here. He's due to leave. He's not going to go for a while either, so... It would have been good to see him go, but no. A lot of steel going somewhere. Now, we are still on this very steep hill. It's only 1.4% here, so it's not as bad. Just letting it creep up a little. See, the water's quite nice. Why can't you do that in TSW2 with the Unreal Engine, guys? In the Unreal Engine, you should be able to see through the water. You see what I mean about these cast concrete structures? Not sure if these would have been quite like this, but who knows? Now, I kind of think that's actually the little tunnel that is crossed by the Hayward Fault. Not quite paying attention there. Put a little bit of brake on, just to keep our speed controlled. We're still going up. Come on, I want to go down. Got a curve coming up that I want to slow down for as well. Seems to be more or less holding its own. A little creeping up slowly. Just have to keep an eye on that. 10 miles to go. And this is Rock Ridge, which is quite a large town for this time. I'm guessing I stop here where all my people are, but that seems that I'm going to stop on the other side of the crossing based on the numbers. Maybe not. No, right here. Load them up. Why do I still hear wheels squealing? Bug. In case you haven't noticed, game, we've stopped. It's interesting that it's a set of points sitting in a road. Don't think anyone would really want to do that. So we are now on the inner bay. I'm just going to let that creep up by itself. Because we are now actually in Oakland, effectively. Let's just give that a bit of brake, because it's creeping too much. To come back here to give it some brake. And we're back where BART is, but it's actually a different line. What was I saying about keeping an eye on it? Well, I didn't. So soon we're coming to College Avenue. Now we might have to stop up here, so I'm going to slow down a bit because we're coming into street running now, so I kind of have to obey traffic lights. And they are currently against us. I'm also going to turn off this massive headlight so I can see what colour traffic lights actually are. Yep. Now we're on the streets now, no more horny. Traffic lights went green, so we're heading across. Now, just after I just come to a proper stop here, and you look at these shop fronts, not 1937, there's stuff from the 60s in there, in those shop fronts. Alright, stop here. Just have a look at the back of the train. See, that could be. That's fine. Fine. Yeah, fine. What's that? Look at that. Whoop. Is that an Ames chair? Yeah, I think it might be. Don't think they were around in 1937 somehow. But that's okay. Poetic license. Bit of modeller's license. Bit of scenery designers going whatever. So I'm just going to let it roll here because this is a 2.2% grade. So where we're heading to is here, 40th and Shafter. And there's not much there today that would suggest that there'd been any kind of railway there in the past. Still 25 mile an hour through here though. Even without the trolley. Or tram, as I'd prefer to call it. But this area is still much like this. It's not really changed all that much. It's a little bit grubbier. But it still looks a lot like this. Even the colours are similar. Cars are certainly different. And no more train tracks here. Not all cities had the foresight to keep their light rail networks, as they're called today. And this one must have been quite interesting in its day because it's a single track but it's bi-directional. And of course it's on the wrong side of the road for the traffic. For me it's on the correct side of the road, which is the left side of the road. Actually have to use some power here. It's still a down gradient, but it's quite slight now. Just trundling through town. So we're well and truly in the guts of Oakland now, but still in the hilly bits. So this is the bits of Oakland that are expensive. That funny little structure there is actually a signal box, controlling that complex junction of light rail trains. Now, interestingly, this is what it looks like today, this particular spot. So you can sort of see some clues of where stuff might have been, but not much. And you can see the buildings really haven't changed much if you go up there. So away we go. If I put the mouse back on here. Of course, we probably should have looked to see if anything coming. Luckily not. So if my timing's right, we should start to see some other light rail traffic. Heading along in more or less the same direction as us. Traffic lights are green. That's lucky. Yep, we missed a stop. Oh well. They blow through them in real life too. I was looking at this building on the right trying to figure out if it still existed today. He just appeared there, officer. I didn't do it. I'm just keeping up with the traffic. Don't tell me I'm speeding. Not that you'd really know anyway, because look, if I turn off the HUD, see a speedo anywhere? No. So we've got to stop in a bit of a corner coming up. Now what I learned is that these cars just go straight through you. Watch. Oh no, this one's going to stop. Yeah, normally they just go straight through you. Okay, we're going to stop here in a moment at San Pablo. There's a train order signal here, but it's green. So we're not stopping on this side of the road. That's interesting. hear a little bit of joint noises across there, but I'd expect a lot more in reality. Much louder. So we're just going to stop for these red lights, but that's convenient because I think it's where we want to stop anyway. Hopefully it's near enough. It's not going to load passengers here anyway. I'm just trying to find it on the map. So there was Telegraph. So where we are now, we're basically under where Highway 80 is today. We're basically about here. So we're coming up Martin Luther King, the great man himself. But let's get out of here anyway. Since these traffic lights are kind enough to sit here green for us, we should probably go. It still wants me to stop here. That's interesting. Let's just try and stop again. No. It's not picking up passengers. That's okay. So we'll just get out of here. It'll tell me I failed that stop, even though I quite clearly did not. As soon as our trailing cars pass the speed limit, we're up to 35. See, now it beeps at you. Because we're currently now in the key system. That's what those numbers on the left-hand side are. It's the controls for speed around here. It's transponders in the track. It was pretty advanced for its time. There's no automatic train control, I don't think, on the key system. But there was certainly some pretty good signalling. So it's quite clever. And those green things you'll recognise are part of the maze today. That's the lower sections. They're still there. And they feel right for the error. Yes, I know. But I've got to go up a hill. I wanted to build up some speed. I want speed, god damn it. I'm going to get up the hill without speed. See? Now I'm slow. It's your fault, game. But these green freeway structures that are here, I'll just drop this power off a little bit and pop outside. Those are the lower levels of the maze in Oakland with Highway 80 and 880 and 24 and everything else that joins up there. And today there's those massive flyovers over the top. And this, I think, off to our left might be a rail yard today, from memory. And there's some more bridging stuff coming up here. So it is interesting when you see landmarks that are, if assuming they're correctly modelled from the time period of the late 30s in this, which is what it aimed at apparently, then they're still around today. So this rail yard we're coming to, which is mostly interurban storage and a little bit of freight, some of this is still here, I think. And this was part of the Oakland Terminal Railroad, I think. So as you approach San Francisco, the system gets more grumpy and you have to stay more on top of your speeds. Which is not like San Francisco at all. Prosecuting for little petty things, letting the big things go. That's not like them at all. So that thing coming up on the right is the toll plaza for the Bay Bridge. That's still there, except now it's massive. And I think this area we're in, this far in, is a little bit of a wasteland today. I don't think any of this infrastructure is here anymore. Certainly not the electrified parts of it anyway. Some of the track might still be here. But I think we're mostly driving through what is today's toll plaza. So we haven't got all that far to go, only 5.5 miles. So we're going to cross the Bay Bridge. And we're going to go across to the Trans Bay Plaza. So modelled in this game is the original Meccano Bay Bridge, and in this time frame it's only just open, so all this stuff is brand new. Yeah, I know. Too quick. So you can see the Meccano Bridge in the distance. And the car's heading up onto it. So we're going to head up onto the lower level. And in this time frame, the upper level is all cars, and the lower level was trains. Although there does seem to be a road in there as well, but there's no traffic on it. In my time frame in the Bay Area, when I lived there, this bridge was cars on both decks, and in the earthquake, which I think late 80s, 89 maybe, some big chunks of this actually collapsed. And that started the Bay Bridge replacement program, which took them, God, about 20 years. Typical California timeframes. It is one thing I've noticed that when you go to the areas of the US where it snows, they're pretty quick to build stuff because they only get 6 months and then it gets covered in snow. In California, they're a little bit more relaxed and it takes them a long time to build things. But the new bridge is very pretty. It's partially a fly span and partially a suspension bridge. And it's a very nice design. Unlike this thing that was really ugly and you always felt like it was going to fall apart when you were driving through it. I'd show you the outside, but the game seems to treat this as a tunnel, so you kind of can't. Stick your head out the window though. So that's the bay, covered in fog, as is relatively typical. You can see the suspension part of the bridge on the other side of Ubabuna Island over there. Just the top sticking up. Some more bay. Remarkably empty, because this would have been massive shipyards. The naval shipyards and things would have been... I would think that they would have been active at this time frame. This is pre-World War II, but I still would have thought they'd be here. And you can see the tops of the suspension part of the bridge up there. Just give it a little bit less juice because I'm going a bit quick. And if I stick my head out the other side, that stuff today is where Mythbusters was filmed. Those two big warehouse things over there. And I thought they were part of the naval base, so and in this time frame, is it there, is it not? That I'm not sure. So it's interesting. But that's Treasure Island anyway, which you can get to from Ubabuna Island, which is about what we're about to arrive into. So I'll just go back inside the train so it feels a bit more like we're driving a train. I'll trust the modelers, but I don't actually remember this bridge having this much of a slope to it. But it could have, because you're kind of paying attention to the endless dickheads driving around you when you're in this bridge, because no one ever wanted to ever crash in here. It'd be pretty awful. Just power off now because we're going downhill and picking up speed quite quick, so a little bit of brake. Bit too much brake, but that's okay. Better too much than not enough. Sounds like someone in the family's finally awake. So now we're coming into the concrete tunnel that is Treasure Island. Sorry, Yerba Island. It's not Treasure Island. Treasure Island is the next one over. My mistake. And then we'll head out onto the suspension span part. It would have been very interesting running trains on a suspension bridge because it would have wiggled quite a lot. And you can sort of see San Francisco over to the right there. I'll just stick my head out again because you can... There's some ships in the bay, paddle steamer, sailing ship, and you can see some buildings over there. That tall thing is Coit Tower. So it's roughly in the right time frame because it was made early 30s, I think, from memory. Something like that. But anyway, let's stick our head back in, pay a bit of attention to the train. Because we are nearly there. I don't want to screw it up now. It's been a while. And a couple of you have stuck through for the whole lot. That's impressive. Now, I should warn you that I made a change to the last part of this scenario just before I started this stream. And I'd love to tell you that in the world of computer science and software that people test stuff. I am right now. This is the first time this part of it's been run, ever. Wish me luck. So I had to change the way I get to Trans Bay because the way I had it set up when I made the scenario yesterday brought you in the wrong way. Because Trans Bay is a loop. I'll just really quickly show you what I mean. That is getting slower. Good. So if I flip off to the map, you can see that Trans Bay is a loop. And you're supposed to come in this way, and I actually came in that way. So you can see this guy's starting to leave now. So we should see him soon. I actually thought we'd see them earlier than this, but I must be running, 8:33 game time. I'm running a little bit earlier than I expected to be honest. So all of those things I set up so we'd have lots of traffic coming over the bridge, well, we're not. We're going to see the first one up here somewhere. One thing that's really doing my head in is whether this bridge has 2 levels or not. Because it's been modelled with 2 levels, and I kind of think it does not. But I'll have to have a look at that, because I can't say I'm sure about that. Maybe it does. Maybe I'm dreaming. So I'll have to be a bit careful because we're starting to come down this section, but you can see some of the port buildings down on that side coming into San Fran. And over there is more port buildings. You've got the big ferry terminal. Coit Tower's up there. This bridge has only just opened in this era and has displaced those ferries. It's interesting, that's, I would think, City Hall. So you can see in this time frame it's a tall building. In the future it's rather small. But a lot of these buildings actually look remarkably like they do here. I'm just going to have to put on a bit of brake. So San Francisco, to be honest, around the waterfront doesn't actually look that much different to this. There's a few really big buildings in here now. So some of this stuff's gone. I'm pretty sure that building's still there today. A lot of these buildings down here are. I kind of think actually that's the one that Google's in. One of those, or somewhere around here. Some of these buildings also. So it's a very familiar area. Oh, here's one of our friends. Let's hop in so we can... let's just stick our head out this side so we can watch him go past. These things were called Big Red, apparently. And unfortunately, they're not modelled in a way that you can drive them, which is a bit sad, but that's life. My speed's starting to creep up, so I've got to be careful. Because we've got a 17 mile an hour section coming up soon. Why 17? I don't know. It's interesting. Let's go back inside the train for this last bit. So we're nearly there. So here's another one of the ones I thought we'd see on the bridge, but I was a bit early, so no. I was actually... these first ones that are coming out now, we should have seen these in Oakland. But I was a bit quick. Yes, I know. Too fast. Now, is this signal red? Oh, it's not my signal, I don't think. I think it's for the other track. It does actually seem to be my signal. I'm not allowed to pass it. What now? Told you I'd change the stream, didn't I? Also told you I was a little bit early. So we may not get to our last stop. Actually, let's just have a look on the map, because sometimes in this game signals show as red that are not. No, it very much is. Maybe it's because the points are set somewhere. Can I change them? No. Because I need to go around there. So I can go around there, and go around there, and come in here. That seems to be... Well, I can't go anywhere at the moment. That's exciting, isn't it? It's kind of prototypical too, but no, I have a faint suspicion the signal's never going to change. I think I've messed something up when I made that change. Who wants to see us bad? Because we're gonna. Oh well. Let's just drive through it and see what happens. But I reckon the points are set wrong. Can I change those points? No, I cannot. Can I change them from the map? They are set wrong. But I can't do anything about it. I don't think. So if I go through those, it's just going to be the end of the game. Oh well. And you know what? I am going to go through it, just so you can see what happens when you get a spade. It'll go, signal past it, danger, you're dead. Maybe it won't. That's interesting, it doesn't seem to care. Well, that's interesting. So these points are set against us, so we're going to go over the top of a set of points here. We are now going the wrong way, and we derailed. Look at that. This is what happens when you derail. Well, okay then. Cool bananas. Oh well, I was hoping that you get to see it into the end, but I'll have to signal past it danger once. Look at that, it did know. Okay. Well, we're not going to go through that again, but that was kind of fun. I will try and fix that scenario and see why it's like that. I think I just got there a little bit earlier than my timetabled time, so the points were set against me because they're set for one of those other movements coming out of the terminal. And it probably too much of a conflict, and the game probably couldn't resolve it, so I'll have to have a look at that. But anyway, that's enough for now, so I hope those two of you that stayed the whole thing actually enjoyed yourselves. Would be cool to see something in the chat sometimes, but that'll be it for now. So have fun. Bye.